All right, here we are at 12.16. My name is Chrissy. We got a bit of a shorter one here today, but I always super look forward to discussing a new champion or a full-on rework champion. We were going to have a third person come on the show today, but it was a little too sudden. Hopefully we'll get them next time and we get to talk about them a little bit. For now, I'm joined by my friend Jason.
Hey, Gracie, it's good to be Udyr.
Okay. And let's get right into it. First up, we have Caitlyn, and this is a monster buff. And I'm not sure it was warranted because I think she's always been good, honestly. And she is basically a hyper carry, just not as crazy as some of the other ones. But this is like a monster change. I'm surprised they would even go here with this. And this is even good for like the lethality Caitlyn's too. This is just what do you think, man? Is this too much?
Yeah, I don't think it's quite as monster as you do. I think it is a nice buff for her. And I agree with you that she has been strong for most of the last few years. Really, the only way that you can strongly counter a good Caitlyn is by getting a lot of people to dive her, and that's not easy to do with her range. So yeah, I mean, we have the AD ratio with a pretty nice increase on the headshot, and the ace in the hole they're giving a critical strike chance damage amplification ratio. So essentially, I think at 100% critical strike chance, the way that I understand this, ace in the hole will deal 25% more damage.
That's what it says.
Yep. So I've never really been a fan of that type of, continually adding like 12 different ways to like add percentage damage to things. It's just a sloppy and overly complex way to pigeonhole balance.
Yeah, I don't agree.
You don't agree? You like when they add 12 different things and they can't just have a simple skill that reads nicely?
I think when they add things like this, and whilst it's probably not as true for AD carries,
right?
I think it just opens up more build paths, and AD carries are the most stringent probably, but when they do this with many other champions, I feel it just opens up more ways to build the champion, and I'm definitely all for that.
I think that if they wanted to just make critical strike more valuable, they could have, for example, increased her auto attacking in general and slightly lowered the AD ratios on her skills. It would effectively do the same thing throughout the game, without too much extra complexity.
Honorable mention: her Q has been buffed like a number of times in like the last couple of years. It's getting to like ridiculous numbers. It does about as much damage as her ultimate.
The Peacemaker,
Yeah.
It does quite a lot of damage now. And I mean, there's so many champs in the game with dashes and other mobility now that it's a little harder to hit that than it used to be. But yeah, that's a nice skill, and I agree with you. A good Caitlyn will always be useful, kind of no matter where the meta is.
I think she's always been good.
Yeah, I agree with you.
As long as another AD carry doesn't come out that has like a base attack range longer than hers, but so far they've maintained her identity by not doing that. Even though there's others that eventually get longer than her.
Yeah, so like Tristana, there really aren't too many others that really get to that range, are there?
Yeah, I think it might be her, Cena, Twitch. Not really Twitch,
oh, yeah,
but
that's true. Senna has 1400 range.
but none of them that are like organic like her.
Right. She's kind of like the old school long range marksman.
Yeah,
like
Ash and Varus are the next closest, but even she's a lot higher than them. All right, let's move on to Diana, and I always shake my head a little bit when I see a buff for this champion. But
yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
It's not much of a change, and her old ultimate, which is her new E, Lunar Rush, where she dashes someone and then resets if it's marked with Moonlight, that has a really low base damage, so I guess it's not so bad. It went up by a little bit. And then her passive is kind of like her bread and butter, so I'm actually not 100% certain this should have lost damage. She needs this to jungle too.
If you believe the exact numbers that Rito gave in the patch notes, it's actually, this is more meaningful than it looks like, because it's not a straight linear progression.
What did I tell you about reading those?
It was actually hard to find these patch notes, the ones that we're looking at right now in the video. It was not available on Google, and I wanted to spend more time looking at the Udyr gameplay videos and less time trying to find these notes.
Didn't I send
So
them to you earlier?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Anyhow, yeah, it's not a straight linear progression from 20 to 220. Most of the damage actually kind of gets tacked on near the end, actually after level 16. So the 30 damage at that range might be actually a little bit bigger than it looks like. Yeah, and this is probably about power neutral for Diana, I would say overall.
I disagree. Her
You think this is still a buff?
No, I think this is a nerf
You think this is a nerf? I could see that. I could see
based
that.
solely on the
Could be
fact that her passive is much more consistent DPS, where she's only going to use Lunar Rush like once or twice, like every 30 seconds,
That's
whereas
true,
she'll
and she's not
constantly
building Go on.
she'll constantly trigger her passive many times.
That's a good point. And Diana's not the type of champ that builds like straight up glass damage, glass cannon AP damage either most of the time. So
No,
yeah, I actually agree with you. This is probably a very slight nerf.
I'd say like Suicide Diana is pretty prevalent. You know, just go in and bust the ultimate and do and Zonias, and that's it basically. Not even Zonias.
Well, with the Lich Bane, you need that too.
All right, next up we got Draven, and this is actually a big deal for Draven because the base damage on this ability essentially gives him like an artificial item in the early game that no one else has, because this is merely the on-hit physical damage that his Q does before the ratio is factored in. So this is actually a big deal for him, even though it's not a lot.
Right, even though it looks like 5, that's kind of the pre-increased damage. But I will say that for really most of my league career, I have never been afraid of Dravens. Since I usually bring a lot of CC at the support role. I usually find them to be one of the easiest champions, enemy champions, to destroy, quite honestly. And one of the worst scaling champions in the game to go against botline. Similarly, I'm never real happy when I get them on my team, because even when I get them ahead, they just rush into enemies and get cut down in the late game. So lately, I mean, particularly with the shield bow, I have found that Draven, for the first time that I can even remember, is in a really strong place. And really, the last few months have been the first time that I've ever been afraid of seeing Draven in lane. So I guess if I'm afraid of him, then he must really be tearing it up out there. And this is probably why they needed to temper his damage down a little bit.
I definitely don't think he's ever been bad, and I definitely don't think he's bad in the late game. The way his Q functions, he does like hundreds of physical damage before he can that's added to his base damage and or a critical strike damage, so he always hits like a truck when he crits and stuff.
He does hit hard, but he has no way to protect himself, and he doesn't bring any utility to the team. I mean, stand aside, I guess.
You're right. I don't want him on my team either. He's not the type of AD carry I like on my team, but I definitely, I've seen him played well enough times. I think he is still a threat, even before this season.
Really good Draven play the champion.
But anyway, this is like this change is so linked to like his play style that this is essentially like him losing 5 base attack damage. It might as well be.
You're right. And I think if you want to like get him in line with kind of where he's been historically, that's probably what you need to do. I think you need to take off about this much damage. I think it was probably a reasonable change. I think they were pretty accurate with the numbers here.
All right, let's skip down to Aurelia.
These aren't too significant, right?
Just help her out mid lane. I guess. I guess it'll help her out anywhere, but yeah, you don't see her played mid a lot anymore. For a long time, she used to be played mid as about as often as she was played top, but they did away with that by nerfing her W like a ton and stuff like that.
Yeah, she's going to take 1%. I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
But I'd be happy to see her be able to do both again.
Yeah, I think she's fine in either role. Not great, but I mean, you're talking 1% less damage taken now from magic damage, and a few percent in the late game, less percent less damage for armor. It's not real big changes. I think they needed to buff her a little bit because if you remember in 12.10, the durability update, they really took away the healing in her kit. I mean, I think they nerfed that by 35% or something like that.
Yeah, but they restored some of it later.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They
I
did
don't
do
think
some of
I don't think she got it all back though.
Yeah, even with giving some of it back. I mean, that was I said that was going to completely kneecap her, and it did. And they need to add this little bit of stats on top of it. And this will help a little bit because for a champion that has a little bit of self-healing in their kit, the armor and magic resist are a little bit more valuable. Essentially, it's not only making your base health pool more durable, but also the extra healing that you get worth more. So this will help a little bit, and I think Aurelia probably didn't need it. That 12.10 update was just so head-scratching to me.
Yep. Okay, next up is Jace. And if you're a Jace main, you're not fooled by this buff for a second, because this is actually a revert of like a 5-year-old nerf he got a long time ago when he was more mainstream. Now, modern Jace kind of, I feel like, in my opinion at least, has like a much harder time contributing in like the modern era. I think he's almost like, his damage is almost like too slow. The way he functions is like kind of too risky. He's almost been relegated into just kind of a Nidalee with the way his Q functions. So I'm perfectly fine in the modern era, I say that again, to for him to get some of these numbers back. But don't be fooled. This is almost point for point the nerf he got like 4 or 5 years ago.
This is like Walt Disney. They take away 10 services and they give 3 of them back, and they're like, "We're adding these things. Come spend more money." Yeah, Nidalee I think is a really good comparison for Jace, except Jace isn't quite as crappy. He really is a champion. Yeah, he's a champion that's really based around trying to use both the ranged and the melee part of his kit in succession. That's so hard to do, especially when you can just get blown up. He's been a champ that struggled for a lot of years. I don't think he's been as bad in the last maybe like 2 years as he was for the few years before that. I would consider that all maybe the modern era. I don't know exactly what years you were thinking of, but I was thinking maybe like season 7, 8, 9, 10. He was really bad. In the last couple of years, he's been a little bit better. I see a lot of people who are good Jace players manage to deal significant damage just by, sending the cannonball through the acceleration gate.
Yeah, he can still be lights out before this buff. He can, if you walk up to him and you don't respect him, his combo is still like 100 to 0. But you could say the same thing of Nidalee. If she gets the long spear and the enhanced takedown, she'll basically one hit you too with the swipe and pounce. So, but Jace is much better though. Yeah.
Yeah. He needs a little more power in his melee form, and that's what they're giving him here. So you have 25 extra damage at max rank onto the skies. You have a little bit extra percent maximum health damage on Thundering Blow. These are some nice buffs. I don't think it's going to make him real relevant.
No, I think this is going to be a big change. Look at that damage on his Q, man. That's like 30 or 25?
25.
That's
25.
a lot. That's a lot for base numbers in this day and age.
It is, but I think he was still like enough below par that I still don't think this gets him there.
I think he still has the same problems. You're definitely right if that's what you mean. But
that is what I mean, yeah.
Yeah, this is I think this is pretty good for him. I don't have a problem with this whatsoever. I kind of think of Jace the way you described Draven. When I lane against a Jace top, and you don't see it much anymore, it's kind of like an endangered species up there, kind of like I don't know, Maokai or something. You just don't see it a lot. And yeah, they're always like kind of a pushover. They try to poke you, but then they don't have the damage to commit. I don't know.
The
That's
first time they get ganked and killed, it's like all they can do for the rest of the game is complain and all chat.
Yeah, I wouldn't say Jaces are more. That's more like a top Rengar you're talking about. But I would say the modern era is like there were the recent Keystones and then the beginning of the Mythics. Stuff like that.
Yeah, just the dude has struggled.
Okay. Next up is Kai'Sa, and we do have some Riot buffoonery here to be sure, because the ratio on Killer Instinct has been swapped about 4 times now. If you remember before the durability patch, they also pumped it up to like 100% from 75, and then dropped it back down to 90 right after the durability 8, and surprise, surprise, it was still cool that if it went up to way more than what they originally thought it was after the durability 8, because now they've seen fit to raise it to 120%. I'm perfectly fine with that. It's mostly a utility spell, and the shield doesn't last as long as like Shen or Nautilus's, so I'm perfectly happy with that, and I think that's cool. And the way her Acacian Rain works, when it's got the bonus from stacking attack damage, it actually does a lot more than what you're seeing here. This is only like the initial blast. It like stacks for reduced damage multiple times. I have no doubt this might push it over to like 100% AP if you get hit by everything, or somewhere like 90, 96 or something.
Yeah, this is a little bit interesting because they're mostly targeting the AP ratios for the buffs here. So they're trying to reward AP on Kai'Sa. They did not buff the W in any way. That's the long-range skill shot.
Actually, they did buff the W because the W applies stacks of plasma. So if they buff the damage that stacks of plasma do, they buff W's damage.
Good point. But they didn't buff it as much as really the other buffs here. And I think they're trying to make sure that if you're building AP on Kai'Sa, if you want to get the most out of these changes, that they want you to kind of get into close range and use the rest of her kit. So I think that's all right. Did you feel like Kai'Sa needed a buff in the first place? I mean, Riot certainly did, but what was your feel on it before this patch came out?
Honestly, I feel like they hit the mark on this champion really well. I think she's been very good since her release and hasn't really needed a lot of change. Perhaps specifically her E, which came off a cooldown too fast, and for that reason it gave too much attack speed and non-stop invisibility. So they did weaken that a bit so it doesn't come off a cooldown too fast. But other than that, I didn't really have a problem with the rest of her kit. Yes, everyone out there, yes, it's super annoying when they go for the W stuff and all that. I wouldn't mind if they made that animation and the hitbox a little smaller. It shouldn't be as fat as it is, in my opinion. But I don't really have a problem with her.
I kind of like your idea there. Just slightly reduce the width a little bit.
I think she's kind of like Vayne. You have to put a lot of hard work into this champion and have a lot of decent mechanics to succeed with this champion. Because unlike Vayne, she doesn't get free max health true damage to succeed even when she's 0-10.
Right. You've got to really make the most out of every second you're firing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like she was in a pretty good place even before this buff. She'll probably be very good.
Yep.
All right.
Next up, we got The Rock, and similar to what I said about Kennen the last time, I actually think Malphite would probably be on a list somewhere in the Riot Vault HQ to be reworked within like the next 2.5 years. The more I look at his kit, the more I'm like, yeah, they're not going to tolerate one of like the staple champions of the game having such like a binary, unexcited kit for long. And this passive, it's just proof positive, I think, of that. This is like a passive from 12 years ago.
And they definitely be up for a rework or a visual gameplay update. I mean, this guy has probably the worst looking skin in the game, which is just Malphite colored green with a little club from a deck of Hoyle card symbol on his chest.
Are you talking about Shamrock Malphite?
I'm talking about Shamrock Malphite. That thing looks like shit.
Yeah, no, he's got some good ones. I think Glacial Malphite, Obsidian Malphite, and Mecha Malphite all look pretty good.
Yeah, but for Shamrock Malphite alone, I want to see the rework.
Yeah, that one is ugly. His classic skin doesn't look very good either. Even Obsidian Malphite looks a lot better. Did I say that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, as much as I kind of say that I think he's going to get reworked, I actually like Malphite, and not because I'm an AP cheese lord, because I think he's actually really good. Top versus like a number of picks, he can really shut down a number of things top with like a W max. And the fact that his E reduces attack speed, which is something I imagine they're going to phase out of the game eventually, similar to Silence. There's not a lot of cripples in the game, and if he does get reworked, I have no doubt he'll lose that. But yeah, when he's like got a W max top, he shuts down like so many things top that it's I still think he's really good.
Yeah, I don't think they need to. I think that if they're going to change the attack speed, like you said, the attack speed reduction, they would probably convert that into something that would just give him maybe more defense against attacks. That would work just as well for Malphite, and it wouldn't kind of cripple the other champions around him. As far as these buffs, the cooldown at early levels on Granite Shield is going down, so that's his passive. And Thunderclap is his E, right? The little like damage circle around him.
No, that's his W.
Thunderclap is his W.
Yeah,
Oh, that's one that gives the passive armor and buffs his autos.
His E is like Seismic Slam or something.
That's right. Yeah. Good call. So they are reducing the cooldown of Thunderclap at later ranks. Why do you think they're doing that?
So he can use it more?
Yeah, but I mean, is that really his best tool in the late game team fights? I feel like you'd want to use that more in lane, and it's pretty rare to max W first. I know a couple people do it.
Well, I just made my case for the W max, but I think you're right. I think everyone else maxes this last, and that's probably why they did it, because late game Malphite, the stats that feed into this ability's damage can make him do a lot of damage on hit even when he's building straight tank, so it's kind of like just more of a 1v1 ability late game, I guess.
Yeah. I think the Granite Shield just being up more often is going to help him not get poked out of lane early.
Certainly the level 1 where it lost 2 seconds, definitely.
Yeah, that's great. Like, having that shield up kind of gives you more potential to get in, stare the enemy down, and say, yeah, I'm willing to take a trade right now. And they have to back off and you can get your CS.
If they really wanted to help him, they would just make it so this triggers regardless of whether or not he's in combat. And if he slows or CCs someone, it like goes down by like 2 seconds or something. That little update would really help him.
Yeah, so instead of not taking damage for 6, 7, 8 seconds, he'd actually just regenerate the shield, even if he's in the middle of being slammed down, and just randomly get a shield every 8 seconds, 10 seconds.
Yeah.
That would be so frustrating. You think you're about to kill him, your auto's following him, and then zwink!
I mean, there's a lot of champions.
100 health shield.
I think there's a lot of champions who have little things like that. I don't think it's a big deal for him to have. It's not even that big of a shield.
Champions who automatically get shields in the middle of combat.
That I
without doing anything. But yeah, there's a few. But they could do that. I'm just saying it would be frustrating as hell.
Yeah. I think he'd be fine.
All right.
Then what they could do is at like 16, if he hadn't taken damage in like 30 seconds, they could just double it.
I'd actually be cool with that. That's not a bad idea.
You know, go for like just the late game dream of being fat. Anyway.
That plus like a Earth Drake shield? That'd be crazy.
Alright, let's move on to Poppy here. And this is merely to limit the percentage max health physical damage that her Q seems to do.
Against monsters. It says monsters here. I read monsters and minions. It's being reduced, but I'm not sure which one is the case.
Mine just says monsters.
Right. I had read monsters and minions on another set of patch notes.
Well,
The intention was definitely Jungle Poppy, which is getting very popular in pro play.
all right.
So the intention was definitely to limit her clear against monsters. But as far as what this will actually do, I think it may also affect minions. I'm not totally sure.
Even if it does, I don't think it's a big deal. This ability also has a base number too, not just the health shred.
Yeah, so I understand it's been popular in pro play, but at my level, like I've seen two Poppy games I think in the last few months, and both of them were Poppy supports playing cheese strategies bot.
I think she's actually really good top. Everyone like sleeps on her. She does a surprising amount of damage, and like when you're 1v1ing her, before you even realize what's happening, you're like, "Whoa! Why did I take so much?" Everyone sleeps on Poppy a lot, like Shen.
She does like half the damage now that she did when she was first reworked.
Yeah, she was more of like an assassin back then. Yeah. Yeah,
Oh, sorry, I don't mean before the rework when she got like 10 seconds of immunity to everyone but the support on her ult. I'm talking about after she was reworked into the form she's in now. The damage from her abilities has come down, I think, by almost 50% from like the first couple patches.
I don't know where you're getting that from.
It's been nerfed over and over and over. I mean, we could look up the numbers later and maybe give the actual numbers next patch if they're interesting. But I think it's actually close to 50.
Well, if that's true, her Q's still really good.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we got all the way down to Tristana here. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I have a really hard time kind of figuring out how Tristana has been doing lately. There are some games I see her absolutely go off and just shred tanks. There are sometimes she seems useless. But I think that the bonus attack speed and the amount that they're increasing it here, you're talking 15% at min rank, 25% more at max rank, 125% bonus attack speed. I mean, yeah, with those on hit types of builds, I think she's going to be able to shred people. I think she's going to be very good. I always overestimate how important rapid fire is, though. So what do you think, Chrissy?
I think she's always been a terror. You're always going to max explosive shot first. You're not going to max this first, that's for sure. But yeah, this is pretty crazy. I look at it and I kind of just roll my eyes because Tristana is already like an insanely one of the best hyper carries in the game, I think. So, you know, this is us. What are you going to do? It's more attack speed. She's already running this, lethal tempo, whatever, you know. Is it too much, maybe? Yeah, probably.
It's like my instinct says yes, but Tristana's one of those champs I've been wrong about almost every time I've seen her buffed in the patch notes, thinking she didn't need this, and then she gets another buff a few patches later.
Yeah, the damage on her explosive shot is absolutely ridiculous
when
it's fully stacked.
If you pump that up to, what does it require, 4 or 5 now?
Something like that, 4 or 5.
Yeah. And it can do quite a lot. You think you're getting away safe, your ADC heals you, and you just die anyway.
Too much, too little? What?
Yeah.
Too much?
What do I think about this? Do I think it's too much or too little? Like I said, my instinct is too much. I just can't really trust that.
Yeah. This is like the buff that Jinx gets from her Q. It's a lot. Okay. We're going to skip the Udyr rework, so ignore all that real fast.
300 lines of text?
Honestly, I felt like it was pretty conservative, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
Okay.
Alright, let's move on to Yuumi, and I think we've been saying this every patch. This is really getting depressing now, and I think I've said that the last 3 patches. This is getting into, like, I'm getting into, like, conspiratorial waters now, where I'm thinking they're just going to fully rework this champion at this point, because they keep, like, making her, pretty much untenable without really giving her much power in her other stuff. The only thing they really haven't screwed with is her W, which just gives like a spittance of like bonus stats to whoever she's anchored to. This is getting really sad because if she can't make people fast and it doesn't interact with the attack speed buff and the heal shit, And this is really getting depressing in my opinion.
Yeah. The first few nerfs that hit Yumi, I was like, yes, yes, crush the cat. And the next few, I was like, yeah, okay, let's crush the cat even more. Now I'm actually starting to feel a little bit of remorse. This is a little bit sad. What I don't like about this is that they're really removing a lot of the utility scaling in terms of the bonus movement speed ratio for your AP. The amount of extra movement speed you give to your ally with Zoomies is being cut from 6% per 100 to 2% per 100. So you basically might as well just think of it as a flat 20% movement increase on the E. And while, yeah, the movement speed could get crazy at times, I liked that it was the utility that was scaling with movement. I think that's one of the coolest things that Riot does that a lot of other um, really MOBAs, RPGs, games in general don't do, is things other than damage, healing, and shielding, scaling with your intelligence, AP, magic stat. So I'm sad to see this reduced to basically nothing. I would have rather them hit the heal even more than they have been, and keep the speed on Zoomies. With that said, Yumi is going to be an absolute damn terror with Udyr. Um, so at least there's this preemptive nerf for that.
You really
And
think that's why?
we'll talk more about Udyr. I don't think that's why they did this, but I'm a little bit relieved they did this for that reason.
She wouldn't even be laning with him.
She's not laning with him, but for the rest of the game and whenever he ganks, it's just like the perfect combination.
I guess. Yeah. I'm really not on board with this. And what's even more insulting than all of these changes is it still has this, like, ridiculous mana cost where it just always costs a percentage of her max mana. And when she does bop and block, she gets a percentage of her max mana back, but not as much as this takes. I mean, someone at Riot is going, one of the people with the brain cell is that's going to twitch a little, and they're going to realize that having this mana cost is going to, the way it works now, they're going to revert it back to the way it used to be, just like a standard, flat mana cost, because this is getting absolutely preposterous.
Yeah, no, they had to do the tier of the goddess used to be her always builds before they gave E the Zoomies the percent max mana cost. And I think that they had to do that because her sustain in lane was so insane. Granted, it would be less insane now, but it was just so, there was nothing you could do about it. And you can't kill Yumi herself because she's always going to be attached to someone. Just that the entire concept of this champ, I think, makes it so that they really have to undertune her a little bit to keep her balanced, because you can't you can't pressure or isolate and target her the same way you can with most supports. And I agree with you. It's gotten to the point where Zoomies is like really, really sad right now. The Q doesn't do as much damage as it used to. The champ is just in a sad place. Maybe time for a rework.
That's what I said in the beginning.
Yeah, well, I'm agreeing with you, so there.
Yeah, I don't think she's beyond redemption, even though I personally don't really like her playstyle. I think they need to drop the goofy mana cost nonsense, and if they're going to gimp her movement speed, they need to add an AP ratio for the attack speed bonus that she gives people, as seeing as how they've also nerfed the cooldown.
I think they need to make it so she can't permanently stay on a champion. Maybe make it like 30 seconds, and then you have to like stay off of champs for like 30 seconds.
I definitely don't think that would be good.
I think if you start there, you would have to rework a lot of other stuff, but long term, I think it would make her a much more sustainable champion.
That would be a horrible change. For instance, for one, she never buys boots, so
right,
when the actions,
that's what I'm saying. I want her to have to buy boots.
Yeah, that would be crazy if she couldn't attach to anyone for 30 seconds.
And while she is attached, you'd greatly empower the types of things she could do. I don't know. I really think it could work.
Maybe they'll just pull a Tahm Kench and make her attach like her ultimate. And then make the rest of her kit more conventional.
You're talking about if you're making it like a short-term thing, because if you're making the attach the ultimate, and she can just permanently stay attached anyway, it doesn't matter that it's the ultimate.
No, I'm like what you're saying. They'll shift it to her
Yeah.
ultimate and then make it like only for 15 seconds or something.
Okay, yeah. Gives them like a lot of stats and powers all her other abilities. Yeah, that could be a cool way to do it, honestly.
And then they make her W like a shit version of her current ultimate, or just give her a new W.
Yeah, right. Like you just like fire in like a thin line from where you are,
Of course, if
and you
they
try
did
to hit
that,
them all 3 times.
they'd have to give her a new passive too. If they did that.
That's true.
Anyway, I don't really like Zumi, and when she first came out, I thought this champion would be right up my alley, but she is boring to play. All right, let's move on to Zeri. And they don't know what the hell they're doing with this champion. I guess she's really problematic to figure these numbers out for, because they've dicked with these like every patch since he's been released.
Yeah, they gave her they gave her a couple of buffs at the beginning, didn't they? And they've been nerfing her ever since.
Yeah, maybe.
But go ahead.
It's hard to keep track of because they've changed this Q like every patch now. So they changed the way her auto attack functions, and then they changed the way her Q functions, and they changed the way her auto attacks or the numbers all function, and then per bullet or per little mini bullet in the Q. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, so there's a little bit less AD ratio and burst fire, but the Ultra Shock laser took a huge AD and AP ratio nerf here. I think this is gonna probably. I think this is probably gonna send her to basically irrelevance. What do you think?
Did you say AD and AP?
Yes, the Ultra Shock laser went from 130% of your AD when you hit to 100, and the AP from 60 to 40.
Oh, mine
And she used to
is.
use that. Yeah, the mid lane Zerys used to use that just over and over with AP to try and poke you down.
Mine didn't say that. I just refreshed my page and now it says that.
Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah. When I looked at that, I didn't really give a shit because AP, whoop-de-doo. But yeah, now that's a big deal, yeah. That is a huge nerf.
I mean, the base damages on that, as I remember, are not bad. But the fact that you're taking away a third of the AD ratio, that's insane.
Yeah, that's definitely an overreach in my opinion, since this is like kind of a utility spell, to be honest. And it's got like a long cooldown, so I don't like this.
Yeah, I'm no big Zeri fan, but I think this was a little too much. And I will say on the patch notes, I think there was kind of an admission that this was they were kind of nerfing her to a weak spot in order to keep her in control because they can't figure out the balance.
Yeah,
That's how I kind of read the rationale on these nerfs.
I don't really care for this champion either, but I've played against her enough times to know, man, her early game is just terrible, and her late game is just monstrous.
Gonna be a lot less monstrous now.
Yeah. I've played her a few times. My wrists are too old to play this champion. She's too annoying.
Playing her though?
She's okay. I don't dislike her, but she's definitely not my she hasn't been one of my favorites, that's for sure.
She's probably too weeby for you. She's exactly weeby enough for me.
No. I've gotten used to like a certain ugliness amongst like new champs that come out. That doesn't really bother me. No, I didn't really enjoy her kit very much. I don't have a problem with it though. I don't think it's like the things I bitch about Renata. I think it's well made.
Yeah, it's just a little bit too weird, upside down. It's almost like she's the for any of the Tales of Graces fans out there, she's the Pascal of ADCs.
Hmm.
I don't have that much else to say about her. I think she's going to be basically irrelevant until they figure out the balance and give her something back.
Well, let's just keep talking about her for like an hour.
Let's make it 2 hours, Chrissy. That's what our fans are here for.
I don't want to talk about Udyr. Okay, next up we got Zoe.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally think this was like one of the most cancerous champs in the game when she was first released. But they've toned her down a lot since then, and now I guess they've seen fit to give her a little extra something something. You got to be careful with any of these changes to her Q and her E, because they like kind of essentially might as well be the same ability.
Belt Thief is her W, isn't it?
Yeah, but Sleepy Trouble Bubble is detonated by
That's
her Q.
right. That's fair.
Yeah, plus Sleepy Trouble Bubble also does true damage. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. It's not that big, I guess, so I'll shut up.
Yeah, one of the things I can point out is the just a nice little quality of life on the Spell Thieves, where the minions killed by allied champions while you're nearby will still drop the orb for you now, so you don't have to like repeatedly spam ping them. That's kind of a nice thing. Just nice little buffs all over the Sleepy Trouble Bubble now, doing a little bit more damage. I kind of cut you off. Was there anything else you wanted to say about Zoe? Because I wanted to talk about like how the durability update affected her.
Uh, no. I mean, I still think she has, like, ridiculous damage potential.
Yeah, she can definitely spike. If she's on par for the game, she can spike pretty much any champ except the full tank, from like 100 to 20 or 30 with her combo. She's an interesting champion in that she is a bursty champ, but I feel like she's not a bursty champ designed to actually 100 to 0 you. She has to be very far ahead to do that. She's a bursty champ that's kind of designed to 100 to 30 you, like I was saying, push you out of lane, or essentially get you low enough that when you walk up to try and hit the minions or get back into a team fight, she can come back with a second combo of Spell Thief, with her more Sparkles passive that deals extra damage for the auto attack, or just kind of a paddle star from a long way away without hitting the other skills first to burst you from that 30% level and then kill you from there. So she's in an interesting spot as a champion. I never found her as cancerous as most other people seem to. Just kind of annoying. But I think similar to the other burst mages, even though she functions a little bit differently than the Annies and the Vagars of the world, I think that she probably was hurt by the durability update, where everybody is able to just tank damage a little bit better.
I'd compare her more to, like, a gay Xerath.
Yeah, I think Xerath, straight or gay. I think Xerath might be a good analogy for Zoe. I think that's actually probably one of her closest analogs in the game. You're right.
I think champs like Zoe, LeBlanc, or not Zoe, LeBlanc and Viger, whatever the ones you just said, I think their burst is way more conventional.
Right. Zoe is kind of an unconventional burst match. And that, like I said, she's trying to get you to 20 or 30 and then finish you off later or push you out of land. So she's an interesting champion, but I think like all those other burst mages, she needed a little bit of help, and she just got it here. I think she'll be average.
Alright. You want to talk about this Zyra change? I mean, it's a buff, but, I have a friend that plays a lot of this champion, and, yeah. Okay. Let's move on to Even Shroud.
Congratulations, Leona Mans. Your team is going to do 1% more damage on their follow-up now.
I've seen top laners buy this item,
too. Really?
Yeah, you see this a lot on, like, Urgot and other tanks that have, like, a non-ultimate CC ability. They'll get this, and then they'll get, like, a damage item like Cleaver or Titanic or something. Or they'll get that first, and then they get this as their mythic. And the fact that it gives a lot of armor and MR as it scales makes it, like, kind of a cheap bang-up top item. And then
sorry, go on.
When you buy this, you'll always press the attack, too, so you get even more bonus damage.
How about like a Poppy or something like that?
Yeah,
like
I've seen it
before in top lane. Is that gonna work?
Yeah, I've seen this on Poppy.
Cool. I've never noticed an Even Shroud on a top laner before. But that might just be the moral of the story is nobody pays attention to top lane. Yeah, it's not bad if you're going to be in a lot of team fights rather than split pushing a lot. I could see it working for a top liner. The stats are not great on it, right? I mean, it's a nice cheap item, but it's only giving you 200 bonus health. Generally, if I want to be a really tanky, badass top laner, I want at least 400 health on an item.
Yeah, but it's
Although,
cheap.
now that I think about it, this is a mythic item, and there actually are no tank mythic items that have more than 300 HP on them, are there? I know that one mage item gives you like 600, the permafrost one.
What? None of the mythics give 600 health.
Or is it 400 then? I think it gives more health
You
than this
talking
does.
about Everfrost?
Everfrost.
No, I don't think it gives 400 either.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the mana. That's 600. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it gives a lot of mana.
So anyway, my point is, I don't think there are many mythic items in the game that give like more than 300 health, honestly.
Well, the whole
So
point is that it is a support item, and you can get it really fast in a solo lane because it's cheap.
right, obviously the support items, because you're not getting as much gold income, meant to be cheaper than the other items, and therefore they're going to start spilling over to other lanes who need economy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could kind of like see it for certain types of CC tanks top. That actually does make a good deal of sense because you're getting the armor, you're getting the magic resist, and 200 health for a mythic is really not that bad.
All right, now let's move on to the biggest change that we've all been waiting for. These ARAM specific nerfs. We got to talk about these, man. Yeah, a lot of people, personally, I like to just start with an item that builds into my first mythic or legendary item, but a lot of people buy these basically Doran's items that give the mythic synergy, man. This is a big deal for early game, power and ARAM, dog.
Yeah, because early game power in ARAM means so much, doesn't it?
Well, I think a certain amount of stability, and I'm surprised they didn't nerf the Guardian's Horn. That one's also missing, the tank one that people buy. That's like
I
my
never
favorite
buy
one.
those Guardians items.
I like the Guardian's Horn because it
Ever.
just gives a ton of health regen, and I'll stack that with like rejuvenation beads, and it's pretty obnoxious in the early game. You don't even need those health relic things.
I feel like almost nothing you do in ARAM before like 12 minutes even matters.
Well, I think you might be a little biased, man. It all
Yeah,
adds
what's
up.
my bias?
It all adds up. Just like something early that happened in like a Summoner's Rift game. That money's
Yeah.
not. You're not losing the money.
I just looked up Everfrost. I'm an idiot. It's 250 health. It's 600 mana. So yeah, Guardians, the Even Shroud. See, now you got me talking about the freaking Guardians. Even Shroud will end up really being one of the best tank items. That is interesting.
All right. Now it's time for the moment we've really all been waiting for. I was joking about those ARAM items. Let's move on to the Udyr rework. And I gotta say, I like what I see, and I'm very happy at what they did because I feel like it was a very faithful evolution of what he already did, and they just kind of gave him a bunch of. I think, in my opinion, the only thing they really reworked was his Q and his passive, obviously. I think the rest of his stuff stayed pretty true to form, and I'm really happy with what they did. It's just probably one of the better reworks I think they've done in a long time. What do you?
Yeah, I'm not as rosy on it as you are. The one thing I really do like is that I was really hoping for a long time when they reworked him that they would give him an actual ultimate, and they kind of met me halfway there, right? They gave him kind of a mini ultimate in the form of his passive,
Yeah, it's a
where
lot like Karma's.
yeah, it is. So for his passive, right, it's got like half the cooldown to a third of a cooldown as a regular champ's ultimate, and it gives maybe half the effect that a regular champ's ultimate would give you. It's pretty nice, and I like that part of his kit a lot. The R they made more interesting than Phoenix Stance used to be. Um,
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
yeah, well, you were just asking me kind of like, is it true to what he used to be? Yes, and how do I like it in general? I do like it. My problem with it is, first of all, I watched some gameplay videos of him, and he's broken right now. He is.
I thought as much.
Yeah. And second of all, I think that while you can probably get his balance in general as a champ, like his win rate, probably close to 50% by just messing with the numbers just a little bit. I think the problem with a champ like this, who has so many stats they can get from their abilities, is that if they get ahead, they're going to be an absolute freaking monster all game long. And if they get behind, they're going to be pretty useless all game long.
I definitely don't agree with that.
Udyr used to be like that. Udyr is still going to be like that. And
Uh,
I wish that they had done more to fix that. That's my overall thoughts on the champ.
I don't think that's true. And I think the biggest buff he got was Old Turtle. For the purposes of clarification, I'm going to be referring to his Q, W, E, and R as Tiger, Turtle, Bear, and Phoenix, because that's what they are basically. But his new turtle is like way better than his old turtle, and that's definitely one of the abilities that would help him if he got behind, I think.
Oh no, I think that's the type of thing that actually helps you more from ahead. It
Well,
basically,
they all do that.
sure, but I think that type of defensive skill that basically, gives you, a third to a half of an extra health bar in your fights, essentially. And if you can survive long enough, will give you two, three, four thirds of an extra health bar. Are the types of things that if you're already ahead, you've already been able to build a lot of health and durability items, for example, or just threaten the opponents enough to back off, is basically going to snowball you even further ahead.
All
Whereas
right.
if the enemy can already spike you down, I don't think W is helping you.
Let's start from the top with old Monkey's Agility, is what this
Mhm.
used to be called. And all it used to do is give him
Better
like
game down.
used to give him 5 flat movement speed and like 10% bonus attack speed that stacked 3 times. And that's all it did besides describing how the rest of his kit functions. Now there are a few important things to point out with this passive. For instance, specifically this static cooldown at the top, how it goes down to 50 to 20, and how at the very bottom you see right here it says his next 2 auto attacks every time he changes stats will refund 5% of its cooldown. Now that's going to be 5 seconds at 50, but it's only going to be 2 at 20. But even with that, in even taking that into account, I think he's going to be like doing like an ultimate form of his abilities like multiple times in team fights, probably like 3 or 4 times in the late game. I really think that this is going to make him an absolute monster in the late game, specifically with the Super Bear where he just becomes twice as fast. It's going to be Trick 2G is eating his heart out right now, because this is going to make him even more of an annoying split pusher in my opinion.
Wait, just to understand you correctly, you said you think he's going to be able to use his passive slash semi ultimate like 4 times in a team fight in the late game with a
Yeah.
20-second static cooldown?
I mean, every time he autos, it's going to go down. One ability is 2 applications of his passive, basically, so that's 10%. And then he's going to be constantly switching stances like a million times. So, just think about it. It's probably really only going to have an actual cooldown of like 6 or 7 seconds.
Sorry, where do you see the cooldown reduction?
Right here at the bottom, the second part of his passive, where it says after casting an ability, his next 2 basic attacks,
Oh,
each of
each
them,
basic attack does that. Okay.
not just one stance, 2 abilities in one stance, or 2 auto attacks in one stance.
Yeah, I still think 4 is a stretch, but you're right. He can probably get 3 in a pretty good late game team fight. One that goes really long, you might even get 4 off.
Especially if he's doing like a Tiger Backs, which we'll get to in a second, has an absolutely redonkulous amount of attack speed, and that bonus lasts over the duration of other stances. So, yeah, I think that this is ripe for some pretty interesting stuff, because these numbers are absolutely like off the chain.
I
All
will
right.
say to that though that of all of the gameplay videos I watched, no one maxed or even skilled Q above 1.
I don't know why.
We'll get to why a little bit later.
It functions pretty much the same as Set's Q, except his doesn't do half as much damage, and his Q is very strong. And I think the Q got the biggest change. Let's move down to that. Whereas before, Tiger was kind of like a DPS ability, this is almost like a super burst ability now. And when he upgrades this, it also does like a massive amount. This almost feels like Kozilek's Q, to be honest, more than his old Tiger Strike. This is the one that I was worried about the most. But when you see about like the raw amount of attack speed this gives, 70 plus another 70 plus the 30 from his passive, I mean, this is getting into pretty silly numbers. And we were talking about how Tristana with 125 was crazy.
Well, that was Tristana with all of her attack speed items, which Udyr is generally not going to build. Plus I think 125 bonus, from her Q. I don't really see Udyr being like super attack speed, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But the Q with the isolation damage does seem threatening. But like I said, none of the high level players that I saw doing gameplay videos were even skilling this beyond 1 point. Just because the rest of his kit is so crazy.
Yeah,
And a certain ability in general.
One thing I'm happy to say is I feel like it opened up him more to more build paths, as more of his abilities have more hybrid scaling. And
Yes.
there is definitely you're going to see Udyrs who are maxing Q, because this is ripe for some kind of goofy lethality, like Gale Force cheese thing with how crazy this max health shred can get. Just without any damage alone, it goes up to like 18% of someone's max health, and that's not even including the empowered version.
All right, fine. You've pissed me enough. I'll say which ability it is. The R. The R is freaking overpowered. The R does so much more damage just over its duration than this Q does by standing there and auto-attacking them.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, that I actually believe you. I think that once they fix the damage on the R, a lot of people might start maxing Q and really taking advantage of both the attack speed and the damage that you're getting off from the auto attacks.
All right, we'll talk about his R next.
Until then, there really isn't much of a point to max your Q right now. Much of a reason to versus the other skills, I should say.
I think a big point is his R does magic damage and his Q does physical damage. And that was kind of the thing with the pre-rework Udyr 2. And while this does do a lot of magic damage, and it is like Mordekaiser's passive on steroids when it's in its ultimate form, I think the thing most concerning about this is how it just slows constantly throughout the entire duration, and you can probably refresh this ability before it even times out, so that's some mad sticking potential. Never mind the fact that he has a speed up in his kit too.
Yeah, you can have it on almost permanently, the ETR.
Yep, it's pretty good.
I mean, if you really want to, choose a wacky build, you can have it on permanently. But, for a practical build, you have it on most of the time. Yeah, and just quickly getting back to what you said about lots of different build paths, I definitely agree with that. I think that's a cool thing that they've kind of opened up more in this kit.
Yeah, I see all manner of crazy shit being tried on this guy now. Like, there's going to be people that are going to be busting out like the Rift Maker Nashers on this dude, and it probably won't even be stupid. I mean, we've seen Volibear. Enough said, you know?
What's really funny to me is that no matter what build people use, whether it's like an all AD build, an all AP build, an all tank build, they're just always maxing the R first. I find that really funny. From there, the order tends to vary a little bit, but the Q is basically just always left at the bottom.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that that'll hold true. I think as old Udyr kind of got older, Phoenix Max was more prevalent than Tiger Max, and that's probably because you have to auto attack way more for Tiger, whereas Phoenix had like a lot of on-hit magic damage. I guess it was burst, but
it also made it clear a lot better.
Yeah, that's true.
know what? Anything else to say about Q? I think I've said all I needed to.
I moved down to Phoenix since we were talking about it so much. But no, I'm totally convinced that Q is with that scaling on that ability is absolutely bananas, dog. Man, honestly, I think you could go pretty much any build that had relatively some durability in it, and all of his abilities are so good, you'd probably do well.
All right.
I do think all of his abilities. I think it honestly his Q and his R and his W are all pretty strong.
Yeah, and the E is pretty strong too. Are we gonna go ability by ability, or should I just kind of like spit out the kitchen sink here?
Okay, let's move on to his E. Okay,
Are
this
we just
one.
skipping the W?
Well, you talked about his R for so long, I moved down to the R.
Should I keep talking about the R? Because I have a lot more to say about that one.
Okay, what else you got to say about it?
All right. Yeah. The fact that you're dealing damage not only in a cone now, but in a very wide circular area of effect, which basically mirrors what you're already doing with Sunfire Cape, which is what a lot of the people are building now. The amount of damage you put out every second, it's 55 damage per second, plus an amount based on your AP, which you actually can build on him. A 30% slow, and 40% if you've used the awakening on it, the passive. The amount of damage you do per tick is enormous. This is in addition to that extra damage that you're getting from the autos. It really is probably the fastest passive damage that I can think of any champ in the game. Obviously, Fiddlesticks, when he comes in with his Crow Storm, will do a lot. But with the amount that you can keep up this Phoenix stance, aka Wingborn Storm, he wins a lot of 1v1's top lane, and he just contributes so much to the team fight too. This R skill is off the charts. That's all I really wanted to say. It's that plus the Sunfire that makes it ridiculous.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good.
I'm predicting at least 2 rounds of nerfs incoming on that one.
I could see them. I could see them nerfing like the awakened form of a lot of these, but the base numbers on this aren't really much crazier than the base numbers on like level 6 Phoenix before he got reworked.
Yeah, but that was when he didn't have an ultimate.
Also, I'd like to mention that they maintained a lot of the same stuff in his kit. Like all of his mana costs are still the same. All of his cooldowns are still the same. The global cooldown between him changing stances is still the same.
That's kind of cool, but they changed the stuff that counts.
Yeah, I don't know. When I play this guy in ARAM, I have a lot of fun, and I like playing him top too. And I would build Sunfire back on the old Udyr, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, but it's a lot better now because it does kind of exactly the same thing that his R does, and that's the one that you want to max. So yeah, he's definitely a juggernaut with that item. What's next? Is it the W or the E?
Let's do the E next.
All right.
This one lost some of its stun duration, but you can stun people more often. The biggest thing this thing got is how when he awakens it, he becomes immune to CC, which is going to make the split pushing just that much more annoying. Never mind the fact that he can like double tap this to get like a giant movement speed boost in a short amount of time because they stack. So you can do the awakened form, I believe it was like a quarter of a second after the initial abilities on cooldown, so he can definitely get out of dodge on a dime when he wants to.
Yeah,
I'm surprised they didn't add some bonus damage on hit to this when he stuns someone.
They've got enough on the queue, don't they? In addition to getting out of dodge, I think this is going to be very useful for his ganks in the early game. Traditionally, Udyr has not exactly been a terror ganking you unless you're just pushed up way too far. And with this, he really does have enough threat that he can force a flash or just get a kill if you're even slightly pushed up. This is one of my favorite changes they made to him, but it does make him a terror with those ganks in the early game. And remember that, unlike most ultimates, right, he can even use this at level 2 if he wants to. Come in and fuck some people up.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I think this is going to be one of the rare uses of his awakened form. But yeah, early for ganks, and then to get out of dodge, like you said, in a bad fight, or when he's already acted as a great distraction and is just trying to micro out of the fight.
No, I think he'll use this a lot. There's going to be a lot of times where he wants to close the distance, but no, he doesn't need the extra damage of awakening one of the other three, or the other two, and he's going to want the like super movement speed that he gets from doing both really fast. So I think he's going to be using that a lot.
That's certainly another case for it. I think most of the time, unless he's far ahead, he's gonna, especially early game, want to have the damage. But like you said, sometimes you just need to get in there to do the damage in the first place.
All right, let's move on to Turtle. And this was the one I feel like they did a lot of work on. It's kind of like a shit version of Mundo's ultimate, except it's probably almost as strong as Mundo's ultimate because his is already shit. All right. I like pretty much everything I see here. It's a little complicated to look at, so I'll try to break this down for you. Essentially, he just gets on-hit lifesteal, heals for a percentage of max health, gets a big shield. Then when he activates it, he gets a bigger shield, stacks with the old one, gets more life shield, and then heals for a percentage of his max health over the next 4 seconds during the time of the awakened version. And that's pretty much it.
Just to clarify, he only gets the automatic healing as a percentage of his max health if he uses the awaken. If he doesn't use the awaken on this, it's just a shield and then on hit, heal, and lifesteal.
Yeah, it's a lot though.
Yeah, and that's an interesting case for using the W awakened. If you really need that healing. This definitely looks better than his old turtle stance.
That's for damn sure.
I would say the biggest part of this skill, between all the different like little parts of healing and shielding that go into it, is the shield. I would say the shield is the most important part of this. That's the thing you should really be keeping in mind when you're looking at an enemy Udyr and his durability. The healing and the lifesteal does matter, but I'd say the shield is the biggest part of what you want to look at when you're analyzing this champ, or when you're just looking at can I win the fight against him.
Yep, and this shield got way bigger. Just adding the original shield of this ability and the awakened form alone are more than level 6 turtle gives before the rework, and that doesn't even factor in the maximum health synergy.
In the gameplay vids I was watching, some people actually didn't even level this to level 1 for a while. Some people did, and then some people actually maxed it second after R. So there was definitely a wide variability on when you're supposed to max this one. I feel like for my playstyle, I would probably max this second.
I feel like they've opened him up to like people do whatever the hell they want to do. I feel it's perfectly reasonable.
Like I love champions like that.
Yeah, I feel like, there might be times where you're jungling where you're going to want to put a lot of points into bear early even, and that might sound silly because it doesn't do damage or something, but if you have damage high laners, all you got to do is get like the initial stun off. You don't need to contribute a lot of, and there's a lot of junglers like that have a lot of CC but not a lot of damage.
I guess the last thing to mention is you get half the healing on hit against minions.
Yeah, that particularly broke my heart because the first thing I was thinking of is how good is he top.
I think he'll still be pretty good top. The R gets so much wave clear top now.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Phoenix had some of it, but the R now has so much more wave clear than the Phoenix stance used to.
Yep. I'm very happy with this.
This guy's gonna run just in a rampage. Who do you think is the best? The new Udyr as he is now. Who do you think is the best analogy for him in terms of another champion? I was trying to think about that. First, I was thinking Warwick, but I was thinking maybe Volibear. What do you think?
It's hard to understand what you're asking. You mean who's more like the way he used to be?
I would say who's more like the way that you think he is now. Basically, what's the
Oh,
best analogy you can think of for a champ that does the same types of things in the same play
to
patterns?
be honest, I don't think his like play pattern or play style have changed. To be honest, and that's one of the reasons why I liked this so much. I think he's still gonna function like pretty much exactly the same. He's just gonna have more tools, more damage, more sustain. I don't know, some cool. He's just gonna be cool.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
what he can. I think the biggest difference now. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. Is that he can team fight better than he used to be able to. He used to be more of like a really good dueling champion. I
okay,
feel like he
well,
can team fight better than he used to. He can certainly do all the things he used to do in terms of getting in there, stunning, microing his way out of fights, and being really annoying.
here's my opinion. I think the old Udyr was super good in the 1v1 late game, and you could build him
Yeah,
a couple different ways, and he was always really good at the 1v1.
yeah.
But and he was good against tanks too, because his damage was so consistent, and he could turn Turtle on for like one hit and get the heal right away many times. Then the pre-rework Udyr, I think in like the Supreme late game, I think only like maybe Jax, Master Yi, or like Fiora could like give him a run for his money. Now this Udyr, I think even it's hard to say who would win out. He's really late game. This Udyr is going to be an absolute terror with how often he can do the awakened things in the late game.
Absolutely. I mean, those are like mini ults.
It's
I think
gonna
he
be
will be able to
funny.
counter. I think he kind of already is for people who have played with him.
Yeah, I think he was already really good before, and you said us makes him better in team fights. I think that's obviously true. I don't really think the old Udyr was bad in team fights, given even with how simplistic his kit was. He's just like you have to respect him, you know. It's like,
Yeah, he
and
ran good disruption in the past.
he's so fast, and he does a little bit. He does a lot in a little bit of time. I don't know. I always liked Udyr. I just didn't like it how people kind of played him as only a split pusher for a long time.
Yeah. Which again is kind of what you do when you're a really good 1v1 team sorry, a 1v1 late game fighter. But I agree with you, and I think that he's going to be able to contribute more to the team fights than he used to, so maybe you'll see less of that.
No,
Um,
man. Dude, this is gonna put his split pushing into overdrive.
let's make this into a thing for the new champions. If you could describe Udyr in 2 words, uh, what would they be?
I can't. I don't know, man. Not 2 words. I don't know. I always thought he was cool.
All right, I'm going to take late game terror as your answer.
I'm thinking just the way that this bear is now, it's gonna make him more frustrating to punish in the side lane, and that's
I'm going
all.
to take quintessential juggernaut.
Yeah. The only thing he was missing was for his turtle to give him some armor and MR randomly. But, I'm really pleased with this. I have to say. I knew the Phoenix would be off the hook when I first read this for the first time, but
Yeah, I feel like they did a fine job with it as well.
I hope they don't like nerf his base abilities too hard if they do decide to go after the awakened version of him a lot. I don't know. I do think he's going to get a number of nerfs though, for sure. I think some super lethality Q cheese is going to come out of the rework eventually because I see Set's Q and it's not half as strong as his Q is, but it does the same thing, and Set's Q is super good. And so, yeah.
Yeah, again, I can agree with you, but I think what's going to happen first is you're going to see the magic damage per tick on his R get taken down to a reasonable level, and what we might find after that is that people find how good the Q is.
Yeah, if you don't think the Q is good, you're a damn fool because this thing is insane. I'm telling you. His
And
R
with
is
that said,
definitely
if you don't
insane.
think that the Q is good right now, you can get away with it because you should be building the R anyway.
I think it's still. I always thought even before Gabriel, it's a preference, man. There's people that think Tiger's where it's at, and there was people that always thought Phoenix where it was at. You know, it's just a preference because one does physical and one does magic damage. You know.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, but They made exactly one of them insanely overpowered on this patch.
Yeah, I agree it's strong, but I think you might not be realizing just how strong his Q is. This is just insane.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's strong, but I think I agree with you. I don't realize maybe that it's as strong as you think it is. Either that or you're overestimating it entirely.
Dude, look at this ratio. And look how much the ratio is, and look how much the base number is without even having to build any damage items. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. It's a big part of the target's maximum health, but it's only those 2 attacks. The R is every tick, and if you awaken it, again, that's like 2% of their maximum health every tick.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, they're both pretty wacky.
Well, there's one last thing I wanted to point out that didn't occur to me until a few days ago.
All right.
And that's if you go up to his passive, and I'm not sure, this might make a huge deal, and then I might be just kind of making a big deal out of nothing. But if you mouse over this thing where it says in the top part of his passive, it incurs a 1.5 second global cooldown, they've made this so his global cooldown between stances is affected by ability haste. So imagine if Sona had the same thing, because she functions on like kind of the same system as Udyr. And imagine if you could get this cut in half to like 0.75, 0.8 or something. I'm not saying
Sona?
he'll be able to build a lot of ability haste. Sona could. Udyr not as much, would be able to build as much ability haste. How much
Right.
of an impact do you think that would make?
Oh, you're saying how much of an impact do I think it'll make on Udyr?
Yeah.
If it were possible to get it down to like 0.75? That's an interesting theory crafting question. Given that most of the cooldowns are already kind of working on 6 seconds, most of his cooldowns, ability cooldowns are 6 seconds. I don't think he. I mean, it's basically designed to rotate through all 4 abilities every 6 seconds, right? And you can do that cleanly with this 1.5 second global cooldown. The fact that you can reduce all those cooldowns and the global lockout by, say, 25, 30, 50% with ability haste, I think would be, honestly, about on par with any type of other ability haste you would use for other champions in the game. I honestly don't think it would have a huge effect.
One thing I read is that Cloud Drake has been special case to trigger on every one of his ultimate things. If you have the Cloud Soul, where it gives you a movement speed bonus for using your ultimate.
Oh, that's cool.
So it triggers when he awakens.
Or just like a boost of movement every time you awaken?
No, it has like an internal 20-second cooldown, but you know it's obviously way more than every other champion in the game for the most part would be able to utilize.
Right, that would be pretty cool and pretty wacky.
So if you got that Cloud Soul, it's basically another keystone. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean maybe even better than Phase Rush, right?
I'm not sure what people take on him, to be honest. I could see him taking like pretty much most of the spectrum, from like Grasp to Aftershock to Lethal Tempo, Conqueror, Press the Attack, Predator. I mean, I think you can't go wrong on this champion at the moment. He's so fucking solid with everything. When he gets nerfed, I still think he'll be really solid with everything, though.
I've seen a lot of people go Resolve as the primary.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I would definitely be a Grasp boy. I'm a Grasp boy all the time because I just love Grasp and Overgrowth and having abilities that scale with like max health and stuff. So
I love that too, but I'm so bad at actually triggering the Grasp in LAN. Like I go in, I think I've triggered it, and it's actually like, oh, it's counting now. Well, I can't walk in and trigger it again, or I'm going to just take 40% of my life in a bad trade.
Yeah, there's a mini game to it. You got to play a lot of top, I guess.
There is. I got to get better at that.
But yeah, I would definitely be looking at that turtle and be salivating over the Grasp possibilities.
Last thing that was on my mind, do you think there's any chance he's going to build Sheen? I almost feel like there's 1.5 second cooldown between abilities is almost like designed to work with the Sheen.
Oh, of
But
course,
I've
man.
never seen him build it.
I
Oh,
mean,
I've actually never seen him build it
Trinity Force was like a core
on,
item
on the
of
new one.
him before the rework, so
Yeah, before the rework.
there's absolutely no reason he wouldn't still build Triforce or get Divine Sunderer.
Yeah, I thought he
I
would be like a Divine Sunderer guy, but I just haven't seen it bore out for the people who are actually playing it.
I don't think so. I
So you
think
think
very
the Sheen and the Sheen upgrades will still be really good on him?
I think very few items are off the table. I feel like they've opened him up to a lot of expression in terms of like some goofiness, where he's essentially going to be like
In
an
terms of
80.
the way that you want to play, absolutely, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think he's going to be able to build really greedily. Like if he's going to feel almost like Pantheon or Master Yi, and then there's going to be times where he is like going to be a brick wall, you know. And then there's going to be games where he's not going to be necessarily tanky, but he's going to be sustaining like up the ass with some stuff people are going to pull out. And you keep your eye on that Rift Maker. I'm calling it right now.
Riftmaker, that's an interesting one. I could see it. He wants that health, he wants that AP, he wants that lifesteal, or
Yeah,
Omnivamp.
You look
Yeah.
out for Rift Maker, Nashers, and then like into full tank. Just keep your eye on that. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. Let's look for that in the future. Definitely let us know in the comments. I'm honestly more interested than ever to know what people think his best builds are going to be. Let us know what you think they're going to be, because I would love to read that.
I look forward to reading the all of 1 or 0 comments people will talk about that with. All right, you got anything? Got anything last to say about what is this guy? The Spirit Guide, or what the hell is his title?
You know,
Whatever.
the champion in League of Legends.
Yeah. Anything else to say?
Nothing else to say. I think he's an interesting champion, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how he builds and how they end up trying to balance his kit.
Yeah, I went out of my way this last month to play a lot of Udyr, so I could enjoy the old one before the new one came out. I wish I did that with Mordekaiser.
Don't be sad he's over. Just be happy that he happened.
I'm definitely happy with what I see. I'm always get a little sentimental about some of the older champions getting reworked, but it's hard to even call this a rework as much as like, you know, he just learned how to go to that first Super Saiyan, you know. That's what it is now. He was like Goku, where, you know, all of Dragon Ball and up to like the Frieza arc, he was super strong and good, but then Krillin got blown up, and here you go, he got Udyr reworked. You know? That's what it feels like.
Definitely an interesting analogy. Maybe this was a time skip, and he became less goofy looking.
Yeah, the model looks good, that's for sure. Yeah, that old model was ugly. You got that right. I'm curious. I haven't seen his legendary skin post rework yet, so I'm sure it looks great though.
The skins look really good, actually.
That was the one thing that did look good on his old one though. So I look forward to seeing how they rework that too. Essentially,
The definitely not Udyr skin is hilarious. Take a look at that one; you'll have a good laugh.
is that the one where he's dressed up like a bee or like an ant, a cow or something? Or no, he's a bird. He's dressed up like a bird, right?
Galio's dressed up like a bird. I don't think the Udyr one was. I think he just had a disguise on.
Whatever. Okay. That's it for 12.17, and I really hope we get that third person for our next video in a couple weeks. But we'll see you next time.
Catch you next time.